If he was Chelsea manager, he'd been sacked already. If he was United manager, probably the same. Pretty much any club would already have moved. Liverpool will give him as long as they can. He looks like he does not know how to solve it.
We back! Like the Cleveland Browns. Arsenal first upgraded their tifo game, then upgraded their football game. An emotional Eberechi Eze delivering the goals which smashed the Tottenham. Massive 3 points for Hathaway's boys, and the feeling of Spurs and Freude makes it all the sweeter. Liverpool so sad and bereft at this point, even I can't enjoy it anymore. I will say, I learned watching them raw. Pity, such an annoying human emotion as a regulator. As Bobby's Bangers wrote in our Discord, REM said, everybody verts. Chelsea are title challengers again. Word said right before inevitable mid-season implosions. And Newcastle welcome Manchester City north of the wall, leaving Pep so discombobulated he's fighting cameramen now. To make it all make sense, it's a joy to give a Thanksgiving week welcome back to the orange to my Terry's chocolate, Crown Prince of Harrogate. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
Thanks, Stephen. Obviously being the prelude to the real celebration this week, Black Friday.
The real celebration is West Ham. Getting their war bubbles on against Liverpool next weekend, but I'm getting ahead of myself because I am old enough to remember, Raw, when we handed Liverpool the title 5 games in, we ripped it back, re-gifted it to Arsenal for like 4 or 5 games, and then we decided, no, Manchester City going to run away with this one. Nope. On Sunday, felt like it's very much Arsenal's title to lose again. And I think the only winner in all of this knee-jerk prognostication is snap decision-making. But what the heck?
Do you think that the lesson here is that we maybe should stop handing the title to people in November? Because I do. I feel like that might be what we should learn from this.
When do Everton get their turn, Rule? I think that may be the end of days when we decide, wow, title over. Everton Football Club, it's theirs.
But it's really tempting to do. I remember there've been years where like Brighton have been second in October, and there's part of your brain that there's obviously part of your brain that knows this won't last and it will be the normal top 6 or whatever. But there's part of you that thinks, well, why can't they mount a title challenge? And then you go out in public and say, I think Brighton can mount a title challenge, and obviously they don't, and you look stupid. It's a strange imperative that we have to declare the season over after every single weekend, and I do not understand it.
I know, just live it, enjoy it, savour it, drink it in, as Peter Drury would say in one of his final poems that he delivers up. Drink it in, because he loved. No one says drink it in like Peter Drury. Somehow it has 3 syllables, that word, when he roars it. Drink it in.
That is how he talks to his children when they are at the Pizza Hut, unlimited refill station.
Yeah, fixings with no G for the salad bar. Go to the fixings, says he. By the way, drink it. It is amazing, though. We were sure Liverpool. We're going to get to this, but we were so sure. Consensus wisdom. That 5 games, Liverpool winning last second. They had, what was it, 4.5 point gap. We were like, title over. I mean, really, it's just a battle for Champions League places at this point, which kind of retrospectively, it's like Tracy Chapman thinking about how nice it felt to drive in your car, arm around the shoulder, speed so fast, felt like you were drunk.
I suppose that the serious point is that as much as it looks this weekend as though it does feel like there's been a bit of a shift this weekend in Arsenal's favour. That was a big win in the North London derby, combined with a defeat for City. We can all pretend that the defeat for Liverpool was relevant to the title race. I think it probably wasn't. We should remember, these things are delicate and they are fragile. And the lesson of the Premier League this season, last season, is that lots of teams can beat lots of other teams. So it is possible that Arsenal need to keep paying attention, I suppose, is the main lesson there. You can't afford to take your foot off the gas.
I was just listening to a really respected show where they were talking about Manchester City. They're like, they just can't put a run together. And I was like, what? What? Was like what they did before they lost at Newcastle. What was it, 10 out of 11? Was that not a good enough run for you? I don't even know. Anyway, I think the one truth it teaches us, and this is honestly partly why I love football, is that like life itself, it teaches us all that we know nothing and constantly makes fools out of all of us. So let's be fools, Raw, and dive on in. First, though, I do need to give huge thanks to the Bank of America, official bank of US soccer, and the FIFA World Cup 2026, which is 200 days away today. Soccer's coming home, for supporting the Men in Blazers Media Network. Discover what's possible in sports and in life. What would you like the power to do? I would like the power to talk quickly about the World Cup for one moment. We are so bloody close at this point, Raw, and some big news from Men in Blazers World Headquarters. No. As we approach next year's white hot summer of football, we're creating a series of city guides to help travelling supporters who are going to flood in from all around the world to experience the tournament in every American city, well, like a local. And great friends of the pod, we need your help to create it. The first city we're focusing on is a place you actually know well, Mr. Smith. It's Atlanta. And we want you Atlantans to tell us what's great about the place in which you live. What should the world see, eat, drink, do when you're in the city? Talking the fried chicken at Busy Bee. I love the grits at Homegrown. Do not get me started on late night lemon pepper wet at JR Crickets. Also America's best soccer bar. We've both been there. We did a live show there, the Brewhouse Cafe. Let's honour Atlanta's iconic institutions, your under the radar gems, the places you live, the places you love, best parts of your city you want to share with the football masses. There's going to be millions flooding in. We've created a survey you can take by clicking in the link in the show notes on this episode to weigh in. But Raw, as I said, you are fresh back from the ATL. We were there together. It was pretty bloody good. What's one spot you'd recommend that the fans go to next summer?
I mean, you've stolen my thunder a little bit with the lemon pepper wet. Was Homegrown where we had breakfast?
We did. We had that. That incredible grits, the incredible trout. I love that place.
I've got to admit, the grits. This will get me in trouble. I was a little bit like, all right, okay. I'm glad I tried the grits. Wouldn't necessarily order them again.
What? That's like
That's
going to York
me.
to have a Terry's chocolate orange and saying, yeah, they weren't any better there than they are in the rest of the world.
Let me live my truth, Rog.
Okay, respect.
I went to a place for chicken that I can't remember the name of, but the chicken was very good. Me and producer J-Dubs had a lovely walk around kind of the historic district where Martin Luther King was born and grew up. That would be a fascinating day of game activity. Really centres you in the place and the importance of Atlanta socially and culturally and politically. And then, do you know what? After a game, Rog, I'd get the martyr out to Decatur, my favourite, my spiritual home in Georgia, Decatur.
It is the Harrogate of
the Harrogate of Atlanta, and that's where I feel comfortable, and that's fine. And it was lovely. It's a really nice little town. We've got listeners there, Rog.
I bet the place you had that nice chicken sandwich was actually McDonald's, Raw, but go on.
It wasn't. It was a chain. There were lots of them, and it was amazing. Decatur's a lovely little town. You can walk around it. There's lots of places to eat and drink and have a little kind of look around. The weather was glorious. And you can stop in, I think, Butter and Cream for an excellent gelato.
And Raw knows his bloody gelatos. Number one, I'm wondering when this pod is just going to turn into you doing a populist campaign to become the mayor of Decatur, just using it, as a step up. No one uses football journalism more for their aspiring world in politics than Rory Smith. But I did Google what Decatur's town slogan is, and it's got one. It's like something like life, worship, faith, Atlanta. I can't remember what it was. It was beautiful, but there's a widely discussed slogan that they're trying to make real, which I love. It's Decatur, like Atlanta, only better. Marketing. Raw, I want to get to the football, and I want to start with a toast, raising my third first Michelob Ultra of the day to one Rose Lavelle, a great American who, simply put, is, I think, the most clutch player in the entirety of American football. We had her on stage live Thursday night in San Jose on our pre-NWSL final live show, and she talked about her vision for the final, winning her first ever championship. And then she went and made good on her word by instinctively, 80th minute, that finish, the difference maker, capping Gotham's dominant championship winning performance against Paul Washington's Spirit, a beautiful team who lost the title for the second year on the row just by one goal in that final. Rose, though, biggest games, biggest players, come alive. That mentality, Raw, to deliver big moments. There's none bigger than Rose, who's now done that in the World Cup final. She's done it in her first ever NWSL final win. She's got the Olympic gold. She really is a footballing fireball. I find her truly inspirational, Raw. That mentality where others cower under the spotlights to take your game to the next level. It's so rare, even in elite football.
Yeah, and Rose has always had that tenacity. That's always been one of the hallmarks of her play, as well as the skill and the ability. There's a real kind of doggedness to Rose Lavelle that would make her a nightmare to play against. And the fact, as you say, that on the biggest stage she seems to come alive, that she feels less pressure almost. under the brighter spotlight is extraordinary.
And I asked you who that reminds you of. You came up with the most un-Rose Lavelle human being of all time.
Well, there's a few that I think are legitimate. So I think Andres Iniesta would be a men's football comparison she'd appreciate.
That's fair.
I think Chloe Kelly, who has now kind of delivered in clutch moments for England in 2 major finals, is a decent parallel, different as players. But the one that it kind of really reminds me of, and Rose Lavelle will not thank me for this, Sergio Ramos. A little bit of Sergio Ramos about it. Just seems to love that biggest stage of all sensation. She seems to want to be the main event. In her case, in the nicest possible way. In Sergio Ramos's case, maybe a little bit less nice, but still, it's a really useful trait to have.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, when you told me that, I laughed because I couldn't think of 2 human beings on the human spectrum that are more opposite. But knowing Rose Lavelle, who is an incredibly quirky human being, just genuinely one of the most creative thinkers I've come across on and off the field. Part of her will probably get quite a kick out of being compared to Sergio Ramos. But to the football, and let's start at the beginning. Arsenal 4. Tottenham Hotspur 198th North London derby. John Champion had a great line before this one. He called Arsenal and Spurs unwanted rivals. Don't know why I'm doing my Peter Drury voice for that one. They are. It's a bit like Michigan, Ohio State in terms of the level of animosity and heel spite. If the 2 teams live just 4 miles away from each other, the streets are our own, as North London forever claims. Arsenal had all the wind in their sails before this one. They had City and Liverpool losing for lols. Spurs, though, remember this. Despite not winning at Arsenal in 15 seasons, they've been perfect on their road travels this season. That was the story going into this. But the story was also who was not there. So many injuries on both sides. Thomas Frank grappling with 10 injuries in that squad, which is so much thinner than Arsenal's. But Arsenal's vaunted backline, undermined by the loss of Gabriel Finak on international duty. We'll have him out until after Christmas. His absence a blow. Really like food poisoning. Impacts Arsenal at both ends. The backline, but also his head, that inspirational source of set-piece goals. In came Piero Hincapié, thrown in for his first start from the off. Spurs sat deep, as they did when they won at City on the counter, but it was Arsenal attacking in waves. Spurs tried to neutralise it by all means necessary. They had Bentancur and Paulinho sit so bloody deep, tried to take the crowd out of the game without having really any kind of idea about how to get forward. The first 20-25 minutes, were, history will forget, pretty unwatchable.
They were completely atrocious. It was that kind of war of attrition style of football that the Premier League is producing more and more at the moment and is not really ideal. And look, from Spurs' point of view, given the way it played out, that will be held against Thomas Frank. But at the same time, that's, as you say, that's how they won at City. That's one of the hallmarks of a good away performance, is keeping basically, if you're an away team in a big game against a major side, derby or not, you want nothing to happen for the first 20 or 25 minutes. That is in your interest. And they did it. Did they do it well? They did it reasonably well.
Yeah, I'm laughing at myself because I would go on Morning Joe on Monday mornings, and this was going to be my lead game. There was enough terrible football for me to start to panic that I would not have any highlight to show to the American public who need goals. There was a whip sack, a free kick parried by a valiant Vicario. A lot of moaning about how games need goals. And when Arsenal have needed massive goals this season, it's often been an unexpected gentleman that was always discarded over the summer. Leandro Trossard, who steps up, that tiny little Belgian Warby Parker merchant. And here it was Mourinho who found him with a pass which was like, it was like listening to Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing in its entirety, Raw. It
was an incredible ball from a player who doesn't get enough credit for the creative side of his game. Mourinho is seen as kind of a battering ram, I guess, someone who can play either as a defensive midfielder or as I'd say false nine, but it's not really a false nine. He's just a defensive midfielder playing as a striker. But there's a subtlety and a delicacy to him as well. He is, after all, a Spanish midfielder, and that was the sort of pass that a Spanish midfielder plays.
Yeah, God bless Trossard. That man loves a North London derby goal. Dude's been involved in 4 goals, I think, in his last 4 games. The spin, the footwork, the deflection. Trossard, am I like being hyperbolic, knee-jerk, just reacting to a moment? To me, he's quietly turning into a superstar of Arsenal's season.
Yeah, unexpected superstar, as you say. I would quibble a little bit with the defending on this goal. He did seem to have 2 or 3 minutes to turn around in the box, which, as I understand it, is not ideal.
As one of Britain's leading under-7 coaches.
As a leading under-8 coach now, Rog, I would discourage my players from allowing an opponent to turn around, make a cup of tea, then take a shot.
I think he scratched his arse easily also.
He just had ages, and I don't understand why he had ages. But still, he took the goal really well. I think there's something really uplifting about Trossard's story, because as you say, he could easily have gone in the summer. I think very few Arsenal fans would have mourned his departure, particularly. Yeah. That there was this sort of sense that the club, I guess, had almost outgrown him, that he'd been useful for a while, but now they were moving on to bigger and better things. Eze came in, and they had this kind of incredible depth across the charts. And yet Trossard has not only kind of knuckled down and been involved, he's probably one of the first choice players now. He is, maybe we'll come on to Eze in a second, but certainly until that moment, that goal, he was possibly Arsenal's most informed player as an attacking force. He looks creative and inventive. He slots in so neatly. He's really flexible, adaptable. He gives them so much kind of intelligence, I think. He's hard to drop for Arteta at the moment.
We had a theory, it didn't have a name, but if it was, it would be the Guendouzi effect, that there's players who are so good looking, like we overrate their skills and say, now that's a footballer. There's something about Trossard, the way he looks, just so everyman, that almost is the opposite of that, and we kind of underrate him. But it is utterly thrilling, seeing him dominate, seeing him make himself utterly undroppable on one of the deepest Arsenal squads of all time.
It doesn't help, I think, that he looks exactly like Clément Turpin, the French referee. I think a lot of the time when you see Leandro Trossard playing, you think, were you not officiating a Champions League semi-final recently? And it makes it very hard to trust him. That is the problem, I think, for Leandro Trossard.
He can do it all. God bless. You never do see the two of them in the same place at the same time, which is genuinely, he's like a little Belgian Clark Kent. But we knew Spurs were in unbelievable trouble now. Just one man named Erling Haaland had scored at Emirates all season. Arsenal suddenly freed from desire. Within 5 minutes, they scored again. Rice bumped one into Eze in the box, created separation from, was it 3 Spurs defenders, like a man who'd learnt the game playing cage football, drove the ball, like Spandau Ballet's true, through the scrum, struck again from almost an identical spot, 36 seconds into the second half, edge of the area, balance, confidence, clinicality, artful, precise rather than powerful and uncalibrated. His face, both times after scoring, just, you don't see this reaction often, smiling like a kid who loves the Arsenal. That's what you saw. You saw a man, he'd come on this show last year when he was at Palace, talked about how he grew up idolising Thierry Henry, and watching him, I was just so profoundly struck by the emotions that he was experiencing in that moment. I felt such a joy for him. This was a kid, his story is well known. He'd been on the cusp of signing for Spurs this August. Arsenal swooped in, gazumped them at the last second. He said when he signed, it's been written. I mean, this story, if you've not seen it, see the interview from Eze when he came on our show. He talked about 8 to 13, he was at the Arsenal Academy, wore his jersey, Arsenal jersey, every single day at school. He said, that was my identity. I was the boy, the kid who played for the Arsenal, until he didn't. He was cut, age 13. And he talked about how that utterly shattered the sense of who he was, how it was almost so hard to go back onto a football field. But he did, with faith and family, almost willed his way back. He did the long journey back to this moment through the youth systems of other clubs, then via Queen's Park Rangers and the Palace, really like a baseball player grinding through the minor leagues, signed for Arsenal over the summer, almost in the last minute, cried, he said, when he saw his name on the back of an Arsenal jersey for the first time. So Roy, in that moment, under the floodlights, his first North London derby, this was epic Greek poetry.
It was, and there's something so powerful about Eze's story, because a lot of players lose their affiliations, that they support a team as a kid, and they might kind of continue to have a little bit of a soft spot for that side, but they become quite cynical, they become quite kind of devoid of emotion almost. Football's their job, it's their business, they don't see it like we do. And I think in Eze's situation, a lot of players would have maybe turned against Arsenal a little bit for being cut. There would have been resentment, there'd have been bitterness, there'd have been sorrow and regret, all of those negative emotions, and it might have made him less likely to play for Arsenal. He might have thought, you know what, Spurs is fine, it's not a problem.
Let me reap my revenge with the Spurs, that narrative.
But instead, Eze, I think, got in touch with Arsenal on the cusp of that Spurs deal going through, just to say, look, are you sure you don't want me to come back? I want to come back. Arsenal said, yes, they do the deal, and he gets to live out this dream. And it's really powerful that everything he's been through, everything he's achieved, everything he's done, everything he's had to suffer to get to where he is, that he still has that like childlike love for the team he supports. We like to think that that's how it normally works, but it really isn't. It's incredibly rare that he still feels like that about a football team.
Especially because he'd been chewed up and ground down by the business side of football. So to retain that naivete, that childish fandom, that true Arsenal spirit, we saw it when he walked down the tunnel in his jeans with the Arsenal jersey on the first day of the season. There's a true passion, a true wonder, just a naive love of the game and that childish fandom that drives it. It is rare and it's pure and it's beautiful. I do love that notion you've just kind of flickered alive, Rod, that the most human thing for him to do would have been to join the Spurs.
100%.
And like Liam Neeson in Revenge 1, 2 and 3, just like with spite, which John Oliver calls the rocket fuel of human motivation, just lived to torture the Arsenal. My friend Zito tweeted, Eze playing like a man who had a near-death experience because he almost moved to Tottenham.
That's a little bit mean, yeah. But it will really have rubbed salt in Tottenham wounds that it was Eze who did so much damage, because that deal and the fact that it didn't go through led to quite a lot of change at Tottenham. I think you can probably draw a direct line between that deal ending with Eze signing for Arsenal and Daniel Levy leaving his position at Tottenham, but leaving the position he'd occupied to, he was the face of the club. He was the most present owner in the Premier League. And it's because he couldn't, or that deal didn't get over the line. The fact that Eze was exactly the sort of reinforcement, the kind of statement signing that Spurs would have wanted this summer after winning the Europa League, that he ends up at Arsenal, all of it is very much salt in the wounds.
God, the sliding doors narrative of Eze coming into Spurs and just propelling them forward. There was a Tottenham fan site, I can't remember which one, but they quite honestly and wonderfully said this was probably my worst tweet ever when the Spurs signed Xavi Simons, and he tweeted, Simons cheaper than Eze, younger than Eze, better than Eze. He's like, yeah, I'm taking that one back. But sometimes football is like life, but better. And that's what we witnessed in that moment. There's also a moment of peak Spurs. Richarlison, I love you forever, Richie, striking that low drive, catching out Raya from 35 yards. But as great as the goal was, I think more impressive, raw humanly, was that Richarlison resisted the urge to whip his shirt off and do the chicken dance.
What's the best goal that's ever been scored that is completely pointless? Does that Richarlison goal has to be up there? It was a brilliant goal. Just the invention, the immediate kind of spontaneous imagination to do it, the precision that you need to put it in that little postage stamp where Raya can't get it, but ultimately all in a completely futile endeavour. It might be my goal of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's so... in the moment, everyone tweeted, stop the goal of the season award for a goal that ultimately probably just tacks on a couple of mil to inevitably the fee Everton have to pay to bring Richie home. We'll get you, Richie. We'll save you come January. In our Discord, at Jason M. Williams said, Richie, he wanted to take his shirt off, but Thomas Frank has stapled that bastard onto him, which is probably true. A goal which, at the end of the day, meant nothing. By the way, answer your own question, Rule. What does come to mind for you? Because that's how your brain works. I
remember my favourite meaningless goal of all time is the one in Brazil 1, Germany 7 in 2014 that Oscar scored. The former Chelsea midfielder who now I think is back in Brazil after a long time in China. There was just no attempt to celebrate anything. It was almost like he was ashamed he'd scored it.
Yeah, it was like a beautiful song at an incredibly sad funeral. By the way, Consolation Bangers is possibly the greatest football Insta account that has not yet been started. But God bless Richie, we still love you. And honestly, the closest Spurs came to scoring again was when it was Richie again, I think, kicked poor Eze straight in the junk. Eze, though, had the last laugh. Of course he did, scoring his hat-trick. Eze, like Sunday morning, kept his head as the bodies, I'd say, flew around him. But it was really flung themselves past him, almost from the identical spot. Really amazing scenes. Because this is remarkable. 198 North London derbies before this one, and only 3 men before Eze had scored a hat-trick, not since Alan Sunderland, legend, older Arsenal fans, scored one in 1978. It means no Thierry Henry, no Harry Kane. Eberechi Eze, in his very first bloody North London derby, was a history maker, ecstatic history maker. Mikel Arteta talked about Eze and his aura. He talked about how he's added aura to the Arsenal team, which was a bit like me saying, just by pouring some water into the Atlantic Ocean, I've added water. I don't think there's a more aura-filled team in the Premier League than Arsenal Football Club.
Not at the moment, certainly. But Eze has, I don't know if maybe aura is not the word I'd use, but I think he has given them a real jolt of energy and belief and a different kind of feel, because he's separate to all the pressure that's accumulated over the last 3 years. He's not a player who's been on this journey to get Arsenal over the line. Eze's kind of telling his own story. He's a different chapter. He's a different subject. It's a whole different thing happening with Eberechi Eze. And that, I think, has changed the feeling around Arsenal a little bit. But also, he's given them a different creative fulcrum. They're not as reliant on Saka. They're not as reliant on Odegaard didn't play yesterday. They didn't miss him at all. The way Eze did play, you wonder how Odegaard gets back in the team, which is a crazy thing to say. I think that he more than anybody, we've talked a lot about the depth at Arsenal this season, Rog, but Eze kind of demonstrates it. He's a game changer that they can deploy, and that gives them that extra weapon, that extra confidence that whatever happens, they will find a way through.
Yeah, it's remarkable listening to him post-game. He talked about how he prayed on this and that God delivered. He is truly, genuinely a man of faith. Again, listen to the interview where he talks about it on Men in Blazers. It's really amazing to witness how this man maintained an inner confidence when football really crushed it out of him. And then he walked the hard miles. He really did, with that faith, with that belief, with his family, with tenacity. And I look at Eze and think, God, you can be rewarded in life for doing those things. But I also look at him, Rory, in that moment, as I think it was Declan Rice pushed him to receive the accolades from the Arsenal faithful, and he just pointed up and told them there's one God, there's one God. There's that story, but there's also a true footballing story. You see the error margin of the talent spotters at the elite level, Rory. It's razor thin.
Yeah, and I do wonder whether sometimes players need that rejection as their fuel. That there are lots and lots of players who, maybe not quite as extreme as Eze, but who fell out of one academy and went to another and then developed there, or fell down the leads a little bit. There are plenty of different pathways into elite football. It's not everybody's Phil Foden or Trent Alexander-Arnold or whoever it might be, like earmarked for stardom from an early age and then delivered to stardom by one club. A lot of them have to take like a slightly circuitous path. And I do think it probably has a character building element to it. So Eze will be made stronger by all of the hardship in a professional sense that he's faced, by all of those rejections, all of those doubts, all of those worries. That has forged who he is and what he is. And I suspect that is part of why he is where he is.
Amen. At Bill Edgar Times tweeted, Eberechi Eze, first player with a palindromic surname to score a top-flight hat-trick since Albert Mallam for Huddersfield against Liverpool in 1934. You just knew Eze, of all people, total Wordle freak, undoubtedly, just lived to break that record.
I feel as though Mallam is a slightly more impressive palindrome than Eze.
That's what I thought, man. When I saw that, respect, sir. God bless you to Mallam and your family, wherever they are, probably still in Huddersfield. It's a very Huddersfield name, Raw. Let's talk about Spurs, though. Problem. They were so bloody feeble. I wonder how much regret Thomas Frank has about setting up so negatively, because there was a spell just after Richie's goal. Well, there weren't exactly shots on target, but Spurs did take the game to Arsenal briefly, found out they could. And we forget in this narrative the absences, the injuries. They're going to be playing Paris Saint-Germain midweek, which is like the most unforgiving next fixture. There is fury, let's put it that way, in Spurs Nation to be beaten. Smash 4-1 in a local rivalry that matters very much. So we're meant to see the players fight and snarl and just grapple for every single fight. To have 0.6 XG, I think the lowest ever while it's been recorded. To have, was it 2 shots on goal? One of them, Richie's just moment of opportunity. I love Thomas Frank. I really do. I love his brain. I love his empathy. He said it takes time for his. I mean, he came on our show. He told everybody when he took over, it takes my processes take a moment. I see the injuries he has. No Maddison, no Kulusevski, no Solanke. But a lot of people don't, Raw. I mean, football is an acontextual game. It's not rational. It is emotional. So after the game, he said, I want to apologise to the fans. We're disappointed. We're unhappy in the performance today. Definitely a lot to work on still. It's worth remembering. This was his key line that's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. We finished 17th last season, was his words. I mean, it is acontextual football. We don't like to remember the 17th. We don't like to remember the injuries. How much collateral damage does this result do to the goodwill around this regime?
Yeah, I think one of the issues that all fans have is we do live in that moment. We respond to the stimulus that's directly in front of us, and it takes a while for the rational side of your brain to kick in, and I think we all have that as fans. We will come on to this with another team that's not very good at the moment, Rog, later, where you are capable of thinking, once the dust has settled and your core body temperature has cooled down, you are capable of thinking, okay, I can kind of rationalise this in a way that makes it comprehensible, maybe not acceptable or maybe not pleasant, but certainly comprehensible. And Thomas Frank is right to do that. But he is, and I'm the same as you, I really like Thomas Frank. I think he's a great manager. I think we said at the time, it was just one of those appointments that made perfect sense. But I think he is proof of one of the weird complexities of managing a team like Tottenham, like Arsenal, like Chelsea or Liverpool or Man United or whoever it is.
Like a football team.
A major football team that has aspirations that could look in the wrong context like delusions. There are kind of points for style, that if the football you play is decreed not attractive, despite the fact that is clearly a subjective categorisation, then it makes it a much harder sell to the fans when you lose. Fans will tolerate football that they don't find particularly enthralling when they're winning. They won't when they're not. And so the weird thing about Spurs' season so far under Frank is that their lead position has throughout been pretty good. You know, they were booed off the pitch when they were third, which is bizarre for Tottenham. Not just because they finished 17th last season, but because they're Tottenham. And I think it's because their home form's been terrible, their away form's been excellent, but the majority of their fans are not seeing them in the flesh play well at home. But for that to kind of be viable long term, you probably can't go and get smashed in the North London derby. You probably need to at least put up a fight to give your fans something to complain about. A bad refereeing decision, a mistake, a player that they can direct their fury on. Yeah. You can't just wilt, because otherwise what you have now is a fan base that hasn't seen your team play well at home, has barely seen your team win at home, and has just in the biggest fixture of your season seen them completely collapse. That's not a great start for any manager.
Yeah, listening to you talk about Spurs, they are a fascinating vortex. There's an Eduardo Galeano, the great late Uruguayan poet, quote about football. He said, I've just looked it up while you were speaking. He said, to win without magic, without surprise or beauty, isn't that worse than losing? Tottenham almost have a version of that where it's like to lose without magic, without surprise or beauty, is worse than winning. And that is, I think, the unforgivable sin. I admire it. I mean, they are it's so baked into their DNA, just the notion of Tottenham style. And to lose without style is probably the unforgivable sin. Let's have a quick button up of Arsenal, very quick, Raw. The biggest North London derby win, I think, in 13 years. All the goals from open play. Phenomenal performance, 6-point lead at the top of the table. None of the injuries of key players become the narrative. Gabriel out, Martin Ødegaard out, Kai Havertz, Victor Gyökeres still to come back. What amazes me about the culture there, because this is hard. We've seen it with Liverpool. It is hard. Every single player can fit in and up the intensity of all those around them. They don't detract. Players are able to just slide in, replace mainstays without a speed bump.
Yeah, and that's the depth that they've kind of built over the last year, this summer in particular, bringing in those players to mean that they can take out, slot in and replace and go without noticing it. But it's also, as you say, it's testament to the culture that Arteta's built. There's a real determination and grit and grizzle about Arsenal at the moment. They look like they are not going to let this one slip. They're not going to make it 4 in a row. They're not going to fall short again. I don't know whether they sense an opportunity because City and Liverpool keep slipping, maybe. I think they're very much of the view that they have agency in this whole situation, that this is their season, it's for them to decide what happens, and they're playing like that.
Yeah, there's someone on their Instagram said, Rog, you've got a secret soft spot for Arsenal. What I'd say is, I admire coming second 3 years on the run. Being buried in accusations of being bottlers, which I hate, to be candid, because it's an incredible achievement, I think, to come second in this Premier League. And still find the tenacity, the togetherness, the focus. It's like Sisyphus we're watching roll the rock finally to the top of the mountain, and I think it's humanly magnificent, and that's what I admire. I say, Arsenal fans, savour that Spurs and Freude, you Gooners. Bayern now arrive on Wednesday for the Eze Elise derby. That is just, well done, Champions League scriptwriters. Then they go to Chelsea for a top two clash for the ages. Premier League scriptwriters, you are never defeated. To Newcastle. Newcastle 2, Manchester City 1. Pep Guardiola declared bravely before this one, the season starts today. Meaning the transfer window, the international breaks are now over. He said no international breaks until March, so now the season really starts, which are really words said before extraordinary, unexpected events, because this was 15th place Newcastle, but one of the flattest, most disappointing teams in the league, really an enigma. I think they've won as many Premier League games, 3 in 11 matches, as they had Champions League games. They'd won 3 and 4 there. They'd actually lost 3 of their last 4 in the league. They seemed like borderline tailspin, 2 points off the relegation zone going in. And City, remember, had ripped off a charge to second, won 7 of the last 8. Eddie Howe, also a remarkable narrative, never beaten Manchester City in his previous 18 attempts. I've been there. It's Moyes-esque against United. You could tell Pep was not afraid. The way before the game he talked about how Newcastle were a top team, which he only does when he thinks he's going to batter them. This game wide open from the off. It was all over the field. Haaland missed an early one-on-one. Voltemada twice brilliantly denied by Donnarumma. That battle, Voltemada, Donnarumma, it was like watching Godzilla and King Kong go at it on a football field.
One of the saves, the save from the header, was incredible. It gets lost a little bit because of everything else that happened in the game. But it was a brilliant header. Voltemada's given Newcastle a real edge in the air ever since he arrived, which is not that surprising. He's enormous. But for Donnarumma, who's equally big, to get down as fast as that was incredible. Genuinely mind-bending.
Incredible. Donnarumma, so there's a bit of the Guendouzi factor in him. Some of his saves are so unbelievable. Then the camera just looks at him and he looks just like a kind of middle-aged, slightly stone gentleman who's working heavy machinery. I know he's known as one of the world's greatest goalkeepers. I don't think that's even enough watching what he does as a huge man regularly. Toon running up and down the flanks, fullbacks Livramento and Hall creating in the space that was ceded. Harvey Barnes already had a point-blank miss on the half hour. Pope smothered Haaland bravely. Foden failed to finish off another kaleidoscopic City move. This was one of the most watchable 0-0 first halves that you have seen. This was almost like a miss-off. It was like a no-goal fest. It was thrilling. Second half, suddenly the opposite, cracked alive. 3 goals in, I think, 6.5 minutes. Harvey Barnes, 63rd. Stunning football. Guimaraes leading the transition so gleefully. Lashed off to a charging Barnes. Drove a pinpoint smash past Donnarumma. Felt like misdirection, to be candid, because suddenly that blunt first half erupted into total clinicality. 5 minutes later, off corner slop, Diaz cleaned up the mess, pinged the ball through traffic, 1-1. You saw Diaz, the way he ran back, the way he didn't celebrate, it looked like City were just like, okay, this is our game, we got this. There were loftier goals for this team to achieve, but football, as I said at the top, teaches us we know nothing. And huge credit to Newcastle, really, for their mental resilience here, their conditioning. Most teams would have wilted. The opposite happened. 70 minutes, off a corner of their own. Voltemada, full-on German Yao Ming, got his head on the ball, back across. Guimaraes headed against the bar, and Harvey Barnes blasted home from close range. Second Archer-Selly of the day. Goal did need a whole episode of Law and Order to solve the VAR, but not offside. 2-1 to the Toon. This was a gobsmacking interchange.
The whole thing was a wonderful football match. It was just a really thrilling game. What's the phrase in boxing? That styles make fights. And I think that is true of Newcastle against City. The City are now much more physical. They are much more kind of direct. They are not the team that hopes to kind of kill you by 1,000 cuts anymore. And Newcastle, when they're on it, when you've got Guimaraes and Joelinton and all those players kind of charging around, they are the most dynamic, most physical team in the Premier League. And it was absorbing from the very first minute. In that 10 minutes when all the goals came, it wasn't like you felt there need to be goals in this game. It was good without the goals. The goals were just the icing on the cake. But there is a little bit of a mystery about Newcastle, I think, because similar to Arsenal, they now have the depth that was their problem, and yet they haven't made it pay yet. They're playing quite well in patches. They're getting putting decent performances in against decent teams. But the fact that they were 15th at the start of the day, it felt kind of almost like a false position. But this felt very much like the performance that they needed to say, okay, actually, do you know what? We are a force to be reckoned with in the league. We can cope with these teams. We can beat these teams. We have nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, they look like the Newcastle of our modern imagination for the first time in the league all season. Their players were faster. They were tougher. They were first to the ball, stronger off it. They won this one in transition. We'll say having Chow shut down Haaland so remarkably. That was a defensive performance, or one of them of the season for me. Eddie Howe, congratulations. Beating Manchester City for the first time in 19 attempts. But for Pep, optically a loss. I think it's how football works. It's one loss, but it more than that, it shattered that sense of like indomitable aspiration and resurgence. Almost like the international break made them stall out and left Pep so bloody frustrated. It's fascinating watching Pep when he loses games. You can't just go down the tunnel and mull and do his press conference. He has to do things on the field. The Bruno and Pep convo post-game, hugging, but like that hug could have turned into like some Greco-Roman wrestling like that. God bless. It was like, I've seen that kind of vibe. I've seen it in pubs in Liverpool when I was a kid, late night Saturday, where there's like a laughter, but one wrong word said and it could just kick off. Went to the cameraman right at it, got in with him. The frustration, Raw. Pep thrived with teams at Barcelona and the David Silva iteration of Manchester City, whereas you've said already, you hurt opponents with paper cuts, origami complex, kaleidoscopic passing, total control. Now he's built this Death Star. It's a frustration that if you can shut down one giant man, City become ultimately vulnerable.
I think logically that can't be true, so that if Haaland wasn't there, I think City would still find other ways. They've got too much talent not to do that. But they are currently, at the moment, just too reliant on him to provide the cutting edge. And, all right, Diaz scores the goal at Newcastle via a deflection from Fabian Schär, off a set piece, a little bit of a kind of the ball pinballing around the box. Foden missed a good chance. Cherky played quite well, I think, creatively, but they do look slightly one-dimensional in front of goal. And I think that gives opponents hope that if you can shut down Haaland, or even if Haaland just has a quiet day, if he messes up a chance as he did, 2.5 minutes in at St James's Park, then maybe you can keep City at bay. And I don't think Pep has quite solved that riddle yet. But
it'll agonise him that his very strength can become instantly his weakness. That's
what he's always tried to mitigate against. That he's always wanted to produce these teams that can hurt you in X number of different ways, that control the ball, that control the space, that control the game, and decide when they are going to finish it. Whereas now, Erling Haaland decides when Manchester City are going to finish games. And that's not what Pep wants. It's not naturally his thing.
Just Google what else can a Death Star do to hurt people, Pep, and I'm sure you'll crack it. Talking about incredible losses, let's dive into it. I take no pleasure in saying this, Rule. Liverpool 0, Nottingham Forest 3. I will say part of the joy of the Premier League being on international break is that, forget a missed Leith, I think it was called in medieval times. You kind of forget almost magically what happened before the international break kicked in, and then it comes back and it slams you in the face, Liverpool fans, that your team have been losers 7 of the last 10 in 8th place. Last time out, flattened by Manchester City, that Death Star. Once more then, into the breach, my friends, with the bearded safe hands of Alisson welcome back in goal after 8 games out. Alexander Isak flung in from the start to face a Forest team that beat the Reds at Anfield last year for the first time in 55 years. But they're a world away from that outfit, so we were told before this one. Now under the management of scary new stepdad Sean Dyche. And lost in time also, Raw, is that Liverpool licked at the Forest backline from the off. Mo looked feisty, Gakpo humming, Isak desperate but unable to get himself into the dance. Lost the history almost. Liverpool looked dominant for pretty much the first half hour of this game, you did experience happiness. You were at the game, Raw. You saw it. Fleeting happiness.
Yeah, and I actually found being at the game extremely helpful in terms of interpreting what happened. Because you're right, Roger. In fact, I'd go a little bit further. I'd say until the first goal from Murillo, Liverpool were playing very well. They weren't cutting Forest apart by any stretch of the imagination, but they created at least two golden opportunities, McAllister and Milos Čirkez, both of them missed, obviously, it's Liverpool. But they were on top, they were playing with confidence, with composure, they looked like they had a plan, they looked like the Liverpool of last season. And okay, the breakthrough hadn't come, and you saw little signs maybe in front of goal that they were slightly rushing things, but they looked a good team, they looked a side that could put behind them what had happened prior to the international break and start to build up a head of steam. And they then ran into some adversity and everything changed.
Yeah, 33 minutes off a corner. Liverpool's vulnerability suddenly this season. Conceded 9 league goals from set pieces already this season. And it was Elliot Anderson who floated the ball in. By the way, they didn't concede this many the whole of last season. This is like how we're scratching our head. What has happened? It was partially cleared, only as far as Murillo. Obstruction from Ndoye possibly, but I don't think I understand the offside rule anymore. That's the only thing I can say here, Raw. It's like, it looked to me kind of like the offside that was given against Robertson in the Manchester City game for shielding the eye line of the goalkeeper, but I think it's now, is this right? You understand the rules better. It's only offside if you're small and Scottish.
There is no consistency in this one at the moment. It's gone the way of handball as well. The other example from this weekend is, I think, Eze's first goal, where there were 2 Arsenal players blocking Vicario's eye line. It will make me sound terribly partisan and biased, Rog. All I can think is that they basically got the Robertson one wrong and all the other decisions are correct. It would be a little bit easier to swallow if someone came out and said that, rather than trying to pretend that all of these things are intensely different. They're not. I did see Don Hutchison, who used to play for your boys, Rog, who's a friend of mine. He said on Twitter this week that it was easier when offside just meant offside. And I've got to admit, with these ones, I think he might be right. I think if you're in the way, if you're near the goalkeeper, they probably should just disallow it. That is the easiest thing. That's the easiest way to interpret the rule. And it's also what we did for an awfully long time until they started to mess about with eye lines and active movements. If you're just near the keeper and you're offside, maybe you're just offside.
The olden days are a better rule, and we used to think cigarettes were good for us and, didn't wear safety belts and all those great things. But what was amazing to me was the way Liverpool reacted. I mean, they couldn't have been more shocked if you slapped them across the face with a giant wet fish. Within 3 minutes, it was almost 2. Igor Jesus rammed the ball home. VAR validated a handball that looked very much in my book like, I can't get hit his ribs. It looked very makey-uppy, Corley. Liverpool were rocked. They tried to exert confidence. It just utterly evaporated. The confidence of defending champions, it just evaporated like that. I've got to talk about Isak. Don't like singling players out in darkness, but what do you make of him? I couldn't tell if he wasn't just that sharp or Liverpool couldn't get the ball to him. But then you look at his stats line. 15 touches, 7 possessions lost in those 15 touches, no duels won. It's like, it's limp.
Yeah, Slot said before the game that he was going to have to play him to try and get him up to speed. So he was going to play him ahead of people, Eberechi Eze, who are actually fit. And I get that logic. I understand that why Slot wants to do that, because he will be operating under the assumption that a fully fit Alexander Isak is an incredible kind of weapon to have at a time when you really need a weapon. But based on that performance, I don't think you can play him. Whether he's not fit enough or whether it's just not fair to put him into a team that doesn't seem to be able to involve him in the play at all. I think that was a mistake. I think Eberechi Eze would have offered more from the start, would have been more involved as he was when he came on. Isak looked lost, and yeah, maybe it's fitness, maybe it's confidence, maybe it's that he isn't yet in tune with his teammates, but he can't get involved with the game. And to be honest, the rest of the Liverpool team don't seem to know what to do with him either. There's probably a parable in there somewhere, Rog, but it's quite sad to watch.
I mean, its greatest achievement so far, you could make the case, 0 goals in the Premier League for Liverpool, is making you miss Darwin Núñez. Very, very hard. It's what that great red Joni Mitchell sang. Don't you always seem to know that you don't know what you've got till Darwin's gone? At half-time, Liverpool had 10 shots to Forest 4. But my God, it felt game over-ish because Liverpool have gone behind in 8 games this season, lost 7 of them. Whatever Slot said at half-time, it worked for in the first 39 seconds of the half because Forest, stunning move, Liverpool backline switching off all over the show, Salah losing his man, Forest cut them apart, pulled back from former Red Nico Williams, fullback to fullback, Savona opened up his body, got that foot shape right, slapped home, a huge amount of space, admittedly, that he had to do it. God bless it. You have to wonder what the hell, are the players even listening to what their manager said? But I do ache for you, Roy. I said this to you. I think I may have even texted you. Last season, we spent a lot of time talking about how bloody fun it seems to be a Liverpool fan. You've had it so unbelievably good. The songs, the Grand European nights, the boss nights, the late wins, even Rio, age 16, scoring for fun at the beginning. Look, take it. I know this. It's hard to watch crap football. Take it from me. I do know. That's one thing I know. What I want to know is, can you still remember all those good times in this moment, or do they feel so long ago?
So in the moment, you don't. When you see Nicolas Savona straw a second for Nottingham Forest, you don't think, well, I remember 2005 when they won the Champions League. That's fine. Be all right. In the moment, it hurts. Watching your team lose is not something you ever get used to, I don't think. I don't know whether if you support a team that is habitually... And look, there are teams who have worse fates than Everton, Rog. But, if you support a team that is habitually, I don't know, bottom of League One, I don't know whether maybe after a while the defeat doesn't hurt as much. But in the broader context, once you've kind of managed to internalise the result and digest what's happened and understand it. And as I say, I found being present at Anfield to watch Liverpool get beaten heavily was a much easier way. I came to terms with it much more quickly than watching them on TV get beaten heavily.
Why?
Well, I think because you understand the texture of the defeat. So I know that they were good for 30 minutes. And I know that as soon as they faced that adversity of the goal, the Murillo goal, that they didn't have an energy level to kind of get the intensity back to find a way to counteract Nottingham Forest. I know that Forest played extremely well, and I can start to think, and I'm sure lots of fans operate the same, you can start to sort of see explanations for it. You can see what you think the manager's doing wrong, but you also know the stuff that isn't really on him, that's on the players. You can see that Kirkes, this is a brief list, Kirkes, McAllister, Konate and Isak should not be in the team, that they are not playing well enough to warrant being in the team. You can see that Slot, and he said this himself, and I thought it was a really interesting line. He took off Konate after the second goal for Ekitike. And that was the exact same move he used in the away game at Forest last season when they were 1-0 down, similar performance against a similarly kind of intense Forest team. And he took off Konate and brought on Jota, and within a minute Jota scored the equaliser. And he did it this time, and Hugo Ekitike, you will have noticed, did not score the equaliser. And Slot said afterwards, last year when I did it, it looked brave. This year, people will say it's stupid. And that is the kind of fine line, that he made the same change to a totally different effect. And yet you can kind of get, okay, I get why he did that. I get what he was thinking. He wanted to go 3-3-4. And the more attackers he threw on, the fewer chances Liverpool created. So I think being there, you get a sense of the scale of the problem. And that enables you to set your expectations for when it might be solved.
I got a text from my Liverpool supporting producer, Jaleesa Castrodale. She texted me and said, I feel like someone writing home during the Civil War. Dear Martha, it has been many months since we last felt the sun's splendid warmth on our skin, which kind of captures, I felt like that for years, is the honest truth, as an Everton fan. But you're right, we did a show two months ago about how you saw Isak and Ekitike playing together. Little did we imagine it would occur when you were 2-0 down to Forest at home. And the Forest fans were singing at Arne Slot, you're getting sacked in the morning. This is football. Forest, so bloody organised. Elliot Anderson, omnipresent. Liverpool had all the possession, all the passes, all the stats, but they couldn't lay a glove on Sean Dyche Forest, who killed off the game. Morgan Gibbs-White driving home effortlessly. It felt like a defenestration. It was that shocking. I do believe this collapse, big picture, will be studied by historians like the fall of Rome, or at least Bill Belichick at North Carolina. There's so many footballers who look lost. You've named some of them. Kirkes, afraid, skittish, miserable. Konate, they're in body but not in spirit. Wayne Rooney said this morning, Slot has to start benching Mo Salah, who's hurting the team by not tracking back. Who would you drop to bring this team back to life ASAP?
I don't think it's that simple. I think, as I say, Konate, Kirkez, McAllister, Isak. I don't think you can make a footballing case for them to be in the team at the moment. The issue they have around Konate is that they clearly don't trust Joe Gomez to stay fit. Joe Gomez is so important to them, they can't play him. That's the curiosity of the situation around the central defenders. I actually thought Salah was pretty good against Forest. I thought he looked better than he has in previous weeks. Wayne Rooney is right that the lack of defensive work is not ideal, but I think Slot seems to have alighted upon a solution to that, which is playing Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones as right backs. But the whole team doesn't look like it works anymore. And we're a month out since Virgil called his emergency team meeting. It's not worked. Amazingly, it doesn't seem to me to be a problem of. It's not that they're not trying. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's that the players are not trying. I think that somewhere in the midst of bedding in new players, of adapting to a new system, of working out how to function with the grief of what happened with Jota, that Liverpool's players, lost is a great word. They look lost. They look like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing anymore. I don't think they have the ability now to get to the intensity that you need to compete with a team like Forest, and that is most of the teams in the Premier League. It will be West Ham next week. West Ham will be intense, and I think Liverpool will start out fine. And the question basically is, do Liverpool score first, or do the opponents score first? If Liverpool score first, I think they stand a chance of getting a point, getting a win, because the confidence then comes back and the game state shifts. So Liverpool can then impose the way they want to play the game on their opponents. As things stand, as soon as Liverpool concede, they lose. That's it. They don't seem to have that extra gear, and I think that extra gear has been lost because of everything that's happened, all of those things that have happened in the last few months. And how you get that back, I have no idea.
I mean, the Jota loss is the great unknown. When we're trying to fathom all of this, I think Virgil said post game, his comments were really honest and severe. This is a mess. Let's call it that. That's what it is. It was fascinating seeing Andy Robertson in his moment of glory, the delirious Scotland World Cup qualification, immediately go to the cameras and say, I'm thinking about my friend Diogo today, which led to Arne Slot addressing it. An issue which has not really been talked about. We lack just basic a sense of the grief, which is no doubt just utterly clinging to the players in that locker room. He said, we missed Diogo, yes, as a player and a person. Liverpool elected, and there's no right way in grief to not talk about that at the beginning of the season. It's an input we will never understand. I think the story of this season will be told. I was on Morning Joe this morning. They were like, what's wrong with Liverpool? And in my head, I'm like, do I get into this? Do I not get into this? It's too much to unpack almost in a very quick television hit. I do think the story of this season will only be told in years to come, when the players start to write about it, when it's written about in biographies and autobiographies of years to come. So we can only analyse it from a footballing perspective. And to lose one game 3-0 can be considered a shock. But that first one was to Manchester City at the Etihad. It's almost understandable. To lose the next one by the exact same thumping at home to Forest looks like what Virgil said. It looks like a mess, Raw. This is, I think, the first time it's happened to lose back-to-back 3-0 for Liverpool since 1965. But you look at this season. I mean, Liverpool won their first 5 games. In this, we awarded them the title, but they've won just once since. 6 losses in their last 7, as many as in their last 58. Here, Slot out-coached by Sean Dyche. Who becomes the 6th manager to beat the defending champions. It is really humanly remarkable. There is no doubt rationally Slot has done enough by winning the title in his first season to have huge amounts of credit in the bank, as a cliche is. I'm not a hot taker, but for Liverpool, knowing how critical Champions League football is, Raw, in 11th place right now, I looked at that second half, just how bewildered he seemed. The conversation about Slot being done, it's one where the volume, I'm not a hot taker, but that volume is going to get absolutely riotous with PSV coming and then West Ham away next weekend.
Yeah, it's Liverpool are a pretty rational club by the standards of football teams. The Jota thing, I think, will feed into that as well, that they will be absolutely aware behind the scenes that Slot is facing an incredibly difficult thing to manage. And also that we shouldn't forget he'll be affected by it as well. You know, it's not just the players, it's him mourning too. He's affected by grief. But then they're rational by football club standards, and there will come a point, if they continue to lose, where someone has to make a difficult decision. He is not immune. I think of all the clubs to hit this kind of run with, Liverpool will probably give you the longest. Maybe Arsenal would be up there, but if he was Chelsea manager, he'd been sacked already. If he was United manager, probably the same. Maybe not if he was Ruben Amorim and he kind of, Jim Ratcliffe had decided to invest entirely in that one guy. But I think pretty much any club would already have moved. Liverpool will give him as long as they can, but that is not an infinite wait. And you're completely right, Rog. He looks like he does not know how to solve it. I obviously don't have the solution, Rog, because I'm not paid to have a solution. I'm paid to criticise and pick holes and things. But there was no point in that game where you thought Arne Slot has got an idea of what to do here. It ended like a lot of Liverpool games, either the games they won, and to be fair, I think we said this at the time that they were winning all the games. A lot of Liverpool games, even in that early run, ended with an awful lot of strikers on the pitch and Virgil van Dijk up front. And that is not ideal. It looks increasingly like Slot is desperately casting around for a solution and not finding one. And that is not something that can go on forever at a team like Liverpool. The one caveat, they are 11th. They are only 3 points off 4th. Like last season with City, the rest of the league will wait for them, and that might be what saves Slot. But he's going to have to find some way of turning the ship around very, very quickly.
Credit Nottingham Forest, first team to stop Liverpool from scoring a Premier League goal at Anfield since ... Nottingham Forest last season. Back-to-back wins at Anfield for the first time since 1963. These are all just astonishing statistics. Put some respect on Sean Dyche's name, because Forest are in that huge Ange Postecoglou tailspin, and a month later they're out the bottom three, moving a little in the Europa League and feeling dangerous. Talking about feeling dangerous, and Sean Dyche, Burnley 0, Chelsea 2 at Turf Moor. Burnley's defence, which was championship resilient, has been very, very, very Premier League permeable. Going up against Chelsea, hottest scorers in the Premier League. Chelsea still without Cole Palmer, though, just on the cusp of coming back, our boy, only to have a fight with the door. Broke his little toe, incredibly painful. Is that the most Cole Palmer injury that ever Cole Palmer drew?
It's got to be up there. Yeah, it depends what the door did, I suppose.
Yeah, by the way, I bet you Cole Palmer got into an argument with the door, like, what are you looking at? And that's how it kicked off. The only thing that could be more Cole Palmer is if he hurt himself by standing on Lego pieces, which are all over his... without Cole Palmer, it was a slow burn. Probably more exciting to watch that Cole Palmer pay-per-view rumble with the door than this spectacle. Chelsea lethargic, Burnley sprightly positive, but blunt in the real... in the Kenny Loggins danger zone. No action in the final third. I typed in the MIB Discord that the game screamed, this game will be over once Chelsea snap to life and create, and within about 20 seconds, I crap you not, Chelsea moved the ball forward. Gittins arced a curling deep ball, far post. Neto, unmarked, stooped to conquer. Jose Mourinho always used to say, you can smell a goal before it comes. This one utterly stank. Fragile belief of Burnley gone. Chelsea controlled the rest of the game, put it to sleep with the one moment of true quality second half football. 88th minute, full field move, back to front, 18 seconds. Starting with your maligned goalkeeper Robert Sanchez, supported by Todd Burley this week. Todd knows ball. Deserved an assist, honestly, for the unfazed way in which he unlocked the move. Neto, poem of the pass to free Gui, who was so strong, so smart to roll it back for Enzo to dagger the win. Really, this goal was like a David Silva Manchester City Pep era finish, that pullback and the easy slap. Maresca going bonkers on the sideline. That moment, to me, was the sign of the release of the pressure that he's under in a week in which his team faces Barcelona next and then the Arsenal. Yeah,
he knows that he has an entire country on his side, Rog. He is the one man that stands between Arsenal and a Premier League title. And he knows that he has the support of Tottenham fans, Manchester United fans. He's our last great hope for a title race. Enzo Maresca.
Don't be a hater, people. Be a lover. You can love both Arsenal and admire. I adore Maresca. I adore Maresca probably more than most Chelsea fans. Oddly love Maresca.
Do you think he should stop wearing leisure wear? Because I do.
Why? What would you have? What would you have him wear?
I think you should dress like a grown-up who's in public, rather than like a toddler at home.
Oh, honestly, Enzo, do not listen to the haters. I think you're perfect. If you know what Enzo should wear, a little clown suit maybe. I think Enzo would actually look incredible with just like a little tear tattoo. He's a beautiful, beautiful human being. That brain, that chest brain, is to me utterly one of the storylines. I root for that man more than I can say. By the way, I also root for Burnley, 19th place now. There is fight there. They just, like Everton actually, like a number of teams, lack the money for a clinical striker, which I think separates so many aspirations from realities in this Premier League. But they do look different to their last run in the top flight. The fear for them, West Ham have found some energy. Forest have found a real pulse. Scott Parker, who's always well dressed for Rory.
He is,
must do. He's too well dressed. He's too, honestly, to me, he's too well dressed.
There's got to be a happy medium, Rog, between wearing your pyjamas to work, which is what Enzo does, and going full suit, which isn't really necessary anymore. It's 2025. I mean, there has to be a happy medium.
He's going like full Ukes Uber designer off on the cheap for Scott Parker on the discount store. I like the pajamas. I got to say, I love the ethos that you're essentially saying to the opponent, look, I can just roll out of bed and then not even get changed and still beat you. I think the optics of that are stunning. 2 other games. Bournemouth 2. What? West Ham 2. Callum Wilson, a former Cherry, scoring his first brace in 2 years against the Golden War. Bournemouth. Second was the touch of a tender lover in our Discord. Made in Bournemouth. Wrote 74% possession for Bournemouth and we're down by 2. 52nd minute. Callum Wilson taken off for Souček. Nuno trying to lock the game down. Narrator's voice, they did not lock the game down. The Cherries struck back twice in 9 minutes, rumbled back. A point to staunch the bleeding from 2 straight losses for my darling Golden War Cherries. We both adore Bournemouth Raw, but that ceiling that they're trying to break to, I've thought a lot about them. It's like I had a neighbour in Liverpool who spent years trying to rebuild an old Ferrari, and every time he'd had time to work on it, genuinely, overnight bits would just get stolen. We'd wake up, the wheels would be gone in the mud, like the ornament fob would be ripped off, or like the bumpers. It was just like never ending. Eventually, he just left the thing on the curb with a sign on it saying, "Nick it all, you bastards," which is very Liverpool. Watching Semenyo have his head turned, like Manchester United coming in, Liverpool coming in, possibly gone in January. Is this just Bournemouth's fate to do well and then just Ferrari?
Yeah, I mean, it does make it sound a little bit like you were the person stealing the bits of the Ferrari, Rog, just so you know. But yes, but I think Andoni Iraola still has been weathering that throughout his time at Bournemouth. That no matter who they lose, they don't appear to kind of suffer for it. I think they did this last season as well. They have purple patches and they have moments where it's just a little bit trickier for them. And this is they are in the latter at the moment. They aren't clicking quite as they were, 6 weeks ago maybe. They are running into teams who maybe are coming up with specific plans to stop the things that Iraola's teams do. It's all slightly harder, and you are kind of permanently building a team because elements of that team are going to leave either in January or in the summer, and that is a really tricky managerial job. So even though it's a bit disappointing to see them, I think 10th or 9th now, that is still amazing given the circumstances at Bournemouth. And
it's so heartbreaking as well, because ultimately Iraola in his last contractual year will probably decide to just go and work in the Ferrari dealership in the end of the day. You know what I mean? Go to a bigger club. It's possibly the only long-term solve, and that breaks my heart. Fulham 1. Oh, Sunderland 0. Talking about managers I admire. One of the stories of this young season. Sunderland, the Black Cats returning for the international break in 4th place. After that, heroic 2-2 comeback draw win against the Arsenal 2 weeks ago. I had Regis Lebris, their manager, on last week. I asked him I said to him, have you got in this squad with like 14 new players from 10 different countries, 9 different leagues? How have you made them all chemistry coalesce together so quickly? And he just looked at me with this kind of like Gallic laugh and just said, I don't know. which I just love. You can see that entire conversation. He's such an incredible modern brain of a manager, academic almost, on our YouTube, links in our show notes below. And the notorious RLB took his squad south to... Oh, God bless Craven Cottage, and Cursor Rog delivered their worst performance of the season. Can you say, I was told they were struggling, Fulham. They'd lost 5 of the last 6. Sunderland suddenly looked very much like the newly promoted team that they are, trying to grind out a moment on the road, created almost nothing, had to survive 24 shots from Fulham. 84th minute they wilted when Eltrees Raul Jimenez got his big Mexican boot on a Samuel Chukwueze cross. God bless. Fulham's first win of the season, where own goal hasn't scored, which is an amazing statistic. They're up to 15th now. Sunderland, just their 3rd loss of the season. What does that prove, Raw, other than that nothing will ruin your fast start to the season more than an interview of all Rog?
Yeah, there is a curse there. I feel the same about Bill Foley and Bournemouth, to be honest.
We did it to ourselves.
We did it together. We have restored order to the Premier League. What it proves is that the problem with the Premier League is it keeps going, that you keep having to play more football matches. That's the main issue. And look, Fulham, I think, are one of those teams that desperately needed a win. They'd started to acquire that very troubling kind of aura of the team that's going to silently slip into trouble. So it was a really important win for Marco Silva's team. But for Sunderland, a newly promoted side, losing 1-0 at Fulham that is probably par, to be perfectly honest. And the points they've got already set them up brilliantly for the rest of the season. So it's no disaster for Sunderland, but it's maybe a little bit of a reminder of where they are in the pecking order.
If you're keeping score at home, I've got William Saliba coming on this week. I apologies to everybody. This is all on me. Brighton 2, Brentford 1. Fabian Hurtler rung up his 50th Premier League game in charge in fine form. Come from behind win. Why people keep taking a lead on Brighton is just crazy to me. They've gained a leading 10 points after conceding first. Just stop scoring on them, for God's sake. Q, they're now contractually obliged. Welbeck for England goal. Fantastic finish, to be candid. And a Jack Hinshelwood winner. But the real hero, goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen, swooped to defy. Igor Thiago, a second penalty strike deep into stoppage time to maintain the win. 6th place. The stealth story no one's talking about, Raw?
Kind of, but then are Brighton often not 6th? This is just what Brighton are. It's what they do. We're kind of used to them being there, I think.
God, I adore Brighton and Hove Albion. They are genuinely, they're the Crystal Palace of Brighton and Hove Albions right now. Leeds 1, Aston Villa 2. Game soaked in football heritage. Villa trying to break into the top 4. They'd won 8 of their last 10 all comps. Leeds in the opposite existential reality, floundering in the relegation zone at kick-off, loser of 4 out of the last 5. Their manager Daniel Farker on the thin ice of the rumour mill. But the feral bear pit of Ellen Road was filled with an odd emotion, joy. In just the 8th minute, early contender for crap goal of the season, ball skyward like a shallow pot fly. Emi Martinez, God bless him, oddly meek as he tried to claim it. Scramble led to Conso smashing the ball off Leeds human backboard. German ex-Manchester City Youth Academy product Lucas Mecha to make it 1-0. Villa, though, tenacious. Failed to win the first 5 games of the season, remember, but they forced their way back into this as they have had an incredible habit of doing. Goal within 3 minutes of the start. Across to Morgan Rogers to lift in. Then the same player dispatched an artful just knuckleball of a free kick. It was like watching R.A. Dickey rise up onto a football field. Goalkeeper probably will want a second look at that one. Leeds did have the ball in the net within 10 seconds of the kickoff, but God bless. Beautiful, beautiful Dominic Calvert-Lewin ruled off for a handball. Where was VAR when Maradona handballed in 1986? Raw for Leeds. It's a bit of a cold winter to go all Rolling Stones on your ass. 5 defeats in 6. They've got Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool to come. That is a gauntlet for Farker. But Villa, Raw, you know that chant you only sing when you're winning, which fans love to mock their opponents? There's also, you only moan about PSR, profit and sustainability rules, when you're losing. Villa, 4th, point behind Manchester City, winners of 9 of the last 11. What's the difference between them now and the team that didn't score in their first 4 games?
It's hard to say, Rog, to be honest. I think that there was an element of kind of falsehood about those defeats really early on. Villa they are where they should be. This is what they are. They are a team more than capable of challenging for a Champions League place, that they will keep on the coattails of the elite. They beat City at home, which kind of proves that point fairly nicely. Their home form is amazing, and they look once again like a Unai Emery team. They're really well organised, they're really smart, they know how to win games, and they are where they should be.
God, talking about where they should be, beloved Crystal Palace at Wolves. Wolves 0, Crystal Palace 2. Wolverhampton Wanderers now under new management. Rob Edwards deserting second in the Championship table, Middlesbrough, for this. A team he played for, a team he lives right by, a team he's once assistant coach at, but a team rooted to the bottom. 0 wins on the season. I think there was fleeting joy for him when he was announced to the home faithful. My God, it must have been like watching this for him. He must have felt like David Byrne in like once in a lifetime. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. My God, what have I done? Palace, no Elise, no Eze, but still so exquisite. Ran rampant. Second goal, if you've not seen it, by Yeremy Pino, was just an arc of truth. For Rob Edwards, the statistics are terrifying. Wolves, 2 points from 12 games, third fewest in top flight history, behind Manchester United in 1931, Sheffield United, of course, in 2021. Wolves have lost their last 5 Premier League games, with their last 3 coming under a different manager, which is just, oh my God, Vitor Pereira, James Collins, and Mr. Rob Edwards. At Sour, a Wolves fan in our Discord wrote raw, "Hi Rog, I'd like to return my manager, please. It didn't come with a new manager bounce. Thank you."
Yeah, Wolves might need a bit more than that, I think. They do look like a club that has been allowed to drift for too long. And when Rob Edwards took the job, I did wonder whether it would be easier to keep Wolves in the Premier League from this position or get Borough promoted from second in the Championship. And the Championship is complete chaos, Rog. If anything, being second in the Championship in November is a terrible idea. You want to be 17th. If you're 17th, you'll get promoted. If you're second, you might get relegated. The Championship is a nonsense of a league. And I've got to admit, I think there's a decent chance that he passes Middlesbrough going the other way this summer, to be perfectly honest, because it's really hard to see Wolves surviving from here. But look, we can't hand the title to Arsenal just yet, and we can't relegate Wolves. Things change in football.
It's true. Football teaches us. We all know nothing apart from Wolves are done. This afternoon, we have the reason my weekend was so bloody good, which is that Everton haven't yet played. We lose tonight at Old Trafford. United on a 5-game unbeaten run. Yes, that's not haircut territory. Yes, Mateus Cunha's a game-time decision after a mysterious train-down accident suffered on Saturday. I don't think it will make a difference. I just hate this statistic. No team has more Premier League wins against another side than Manchester United's 42 against Everton Football Club. It was last year, Raw. This game, 4-0 win at Old Trafford. Ruben Amorim famously said, "A storm will come." A man who knew, Raw, he knew there'd be no more haircuts.
Exactly, that haircuts were over and you needed the protection of a big thatch. It's I don't know. I think Everton are going okay. I think they're the sort of team that might be able to give United a bit of a problem tonight. I wouldn't be quite as negative.
I think we're going to get thumped and pumped, but I also like to speak my worst fears into existence, says a therapist, to protect myself against them and try and mitigate this sting. So let's go to a letter to close from Sam Lawson, who calls himself a South Carolinian studying in Provo, Utah at the Great Brigham Young University. Raw, do the honours.
Dear Rog and Rory, I, like the great gaffer Rory Smith, that's me, coach youth football. With snow soon on the way, our fall season is wrapping up, and I recently had my last session with one of my teams. I didn't have much of a plan and wanted to make sure they had fun to finish out the year. We ended up spending a large part of practice on free kicks and throw-ins. I didn't think much of it until my wife asked me why I decided to work on those things with them. I quickly realised that set plays were on my mind solely because of the Premier League. For context, these were 11-year-old girls I was coaching. Have either of you had similar experiences where Premier League influence has seeped into daily life without you realising? And is there any hope for those of us that experience this? Cheers, Sam Larson.
Sam Larson, the one thing I'd say, the wives are always wisdom in every single family. I love that your wife's like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" The only Premier League thing that comes to mind immediately for me that I relate to is being bald, Raw. It's probably my most Premier League thing. Slot, Maresca, Rog, But coach to coach, that's what Sam's asking. In your life, Raw, not just your football coaching life, but in your life, is there any Premier League influence where you feel like you're living a moment stolen from the scriptwriters?
I think I use a lot of Premier League hand gestures in daily life, I would say. Not the rude ones. Yeah. But I quite often sort of do a substitution if I need to change things around, or if I need to symbolise.
He's done.
Well, if I come back watering in the garden and I need to sort of get a message to my wife through a window, Rog, I might just give it a little quick kind of, try and communicate through mime. Yeah. That feels quite Premier League.
Give your wife the double wanker sign.
Absolutely not. We'll never give my wife the double wanker sign. Not an option.
Keep going.
The other than that, I mean, do we not all feel a little bit like we're in the Premier League scriptwriters' fever dream? Do we not all feel that that's the narrative arc of our lives? Maybe that's just me, but I mean, what happens in the Premier League does a lot to define my mood and my experience of life. But I'd say it's mainly the hand gestures that I've taken from the Premier League.
It's so funny. The hand gesture more than any other that I've taken from the Premier League is Ilian Dye's goal celebration. I do find myself doing that often now, like genuinely. It's just it's like a communal part of, like, if I see a GFOP on the street and I'm on the phone and they say, I'm always like, I just give them a little illy, but I do it subconsciously.
Do you do a lot of talking behind your hand?
What, that?
Do you cover your mouth to talk?
Is there another way to talk in public?
No, we should start podcasting like this, Roger.
By the way, we talk about the world in like AD and BC, like that division. I think ultimately you can also arguably divide world history into a time before we realise that we should start talking behind our hand and after it. The world's kind of fallen apart, Raw, since we all started
talking behind our hands. I mean, we should be open. We can't expect there to be lip readers everywhere. Yeah. I think it's mainly in terms of Premier League influence on my life. I think it's mainly hand gestures. Do we think Sam sort of feels as though he's giving press conferences regularly, or is there a sensation where you feel as though you are a manager continually under pressure, which is the main Premier League experience for everybody? That's true.
Oh my God, I love that. I would also love any American that has built a Premier League press conference background in their own home, so that they can. That's genuinely like that. Taking that into your own life to that degree is. I told Trevor Noah, we were chatting about this on stage at the Stone Pony. Often my life just feels like one long, cruel VAR review, which I do think is true. But I will say, to pull this podcast full circle, I look at moments like Eze's third goal against the Spurs, just the crowd bouncing, his own teammates losing their minds, and Eze just surging, trying to keep the emotion in. A moment in which all the work, all the sacrifice, all the loss, all the failure had just flipped and come through. All of it, his dreams made real, his most long-harboured desire proven, the ecstasy just kicking in. I have felt a version of that, an nth of that, in fleeting moments, mostly around like my kids' celebrations, watching them in major life moments. And I do hope, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, Sam, but in those moments, every week, my instinct, I watch them and I just hope that all of us, all of you, for at least a couple of moments in your life, get to feel even an nth of what Eze felt in our lives, even if it's fleeting.
I think that's quite depressing, as you probably don't, do you? You probably don't get to feel that amount of joy. I hope, at what point do you think, I mean, maybe the birth of your kids, you'd feel the same joy you'd feel scoring a hat-trick in a North London derby for the team you've always supported. But I've got to remember when my kids were born, Roger, I was mainly just terrified. That was my abiding. There was no, like, Declan Rice wasn't piling onto me to celebrate. I was just sort of stood there thinking, this feels like a lot of work coming up. That was my main thing.
It's a wish, Ro. It's just a wish, is all I will say. I want to give huge thanks to you, Sam, for writing in. Keep those letters coming, meninblazers@gmail.com. We adore each and every comment. We also want to give huge thanks to Bank of America, the official bank of US Soccer and the FIFA World Cup 2026, for supporting the entire Men in Blazers media network. Discover what's possible in sports and in life. What would you like the power to do? I'd like the power to tell you one more thing, which is we got a beautiful new merch store online, shop.bankof.com. shop.meninblazers.com. We just launched it a couple of days ago. There's a whole load of essentials in one place for all of you. Listen to any part of our network, Men in Blazers, the women's game, Vamos, and more. It's so beautiful to have this thing live and in the world. Get yourself something for the holidays, for those Premier League weekends. I'm grateful for your support. It allows us to do more. Raw, when you come over to New York City for our World Cup draw event on December the 5th, then Boston, December the 6th, we'll have you clad head to toe in that drip.
That would be ideal. There's some nice stuff in that shop.
Yeah, to get some on Enzo Maresca, and this whole show will.
Oh no, Roger! I thought we've set the parameters now. I'll be doing both of those shows in my pajamas. Apparently, that's okay.
It's how we roll, baby.
Yeah.
We're in New York City this week. Then Raw comes out next week for the World Cup action. Boston. I can't tell you how great that show is going to be. Rory, Clint Dempsey, Sam Lewis, Hurt Gomez, two massive guests shortly to be announced. I'll be back with Rory on European Nights tomorrow. James Horncastle joins me live Wednesday on the big match breakdown. Come be with us after the final whistle of Arsenal Bayern. But Raw, huge thanks to you, Crown Prince of Harrogate.
I regret getting dressed.
This is Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted. Encourage.